We are not even a full week into spring and the weeds are popping up everywhere. I had a recent video showing you the progression of the farm literally within 10 days, how green was popping up everywhere, how my plants are starting to wake. The downside of all of that is the fact that the weeds are also starting to wake up. So I am entering to my 4th year of flower farming here in New Jersey. And one thing that I learned very quickly on is that if you're not on top of the weeds in the early stages, they will quickly overtake you. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna show you what does early spring farm work look like on a farm. This is gonna be over at least a couple of weeks of progression so that you can see what we're doing over here, what I'm looking out for, and hopefully this can better inform you in terms of what to also stay on top of. Now, one thing to note is that from the inception of this farm, we followed a no-till methodology. I've talked about in some other more recent videos that that's something that I regret doing, especially in the pathways. If I were to do it again, I would totally till, especially in year 1, and then try to implement a no-till strategy. I feel that no-till is really dependent on your circumstances, your soil type, what works for you. It's not a blanket approach that works for everyone. But that being said, there was a lot of sunk cost in no-till, so we've continued onwards with it. And so therefore we have some weeds that are popping up, but definitely fewer weeds than what I experienced in year 2. And I do think that that is a reflection of diligently following no-till, putting cardboard on in the early spring in the pathways, and making sure that we are taking care of things like rhizome spreading weeds. We have this like very aggressive dock, and keeping that at bay earlier in the season. One of the first places I'm prioritizing is a sea holly row. Don't mind the sheet panels over here. The wind actually picked them up earlier, but this is a perennialized bed of about 60 sea holly plants. These plants are now going into their 3rd year of production, and they are very vigorous. As you can see, I was not on top of maintaining deadheading and making sure that the sea holly was not spreading their seeds. So as I'm pulling apart the debris, I can see that there are multiple baby sea hollies popping up. And one priority is to actually take these out, because I've already aggressively spaced my sea holly. You can see that the distance between here to here is about like 9 inches. If I could do this over, I would probably do about 18 inches minimum. And now that I'm not selling wholesale, or I don't plan to sell wholesale, there is a high possibility that I will be taking out at least a 1/4 to 1/3 of my sea holly, because I just don't need as much of it. We are going to do some experimentation with sea holly just because I don't need stems that are this long and this bushy. So we're going to see if we can get more usable stems for cut flower bouquets. But again, the priority here is to make sure that I'm on top of weeds, because we've got these little vigorous grass over here that gets really big if you don't take care of it. This is the dock that I was talking about. It has rhizomes and it spreads really, really quickly. So we're just going to focus today on this piece and hopefully get it to a state that I'm happy with. One of the other main reasons why I'm focusing on this area with the baby sea holly is that sea holly tends to be very aggressive, even in the early stages of forming a taproot. So you can see that there's multiple baby sea holly over here. If I were to try to pull one out, like, it's already hard to pull out. I actually need to get a shovel, but they essentially form these taproots. Let me show you what I just pulled out. So this over here was a relatively small sea holly. It was probably just about like 4 or 5 inches in terms of in terms of how big the baby seedling was, and it already created a taproot this big. So if you don't get rid of it now, you are going to have a really hard time later on trying to get rid of it. There is no easy way to put this. This is just pure grunt work that's going to happen a couple of times throughout the next few weeks to make sure that we get rid of any baby weeds that pop up. This here is a really good example of how big the tuber becomes at this young stage. I can't even pull this out. I need to use like a weeder tool to do it with my legs. This is nuts. All right, progress. So did some of the major weeding. I think we still need a couple of weeks to see if any other weeds show up, and I'll come in with my garden hoe and make sure that they're out. But in the meantime, this looks good to go for now. We've also got our first florist order of the season. Now, I'm not selling wholesale at the cooperative, but I still have some relationships with local florists who will hit me up if they need flowers for like a specific event. So I'm gonna be giving her these. This is Exotic Emperor White Valley, which is a really unique type of tulip. It doesn't even look like a tulip. It's one of my favorites. It comes a little bit short. These actually, believe it or not, were not even like officially cooled by me. They sat in my pole barn and kind of like chilled at 50 degrees for most of the winter. And so now here they are. So I'm going to give her all of these. And what I do is I'm going to split the bulb. So when I split the bulb, you can see that I am getting literally like an extra inch over here. I'm going to put them into a bucket, put them in like a cool, dark place, like in a fridge, and they will actually continue stretching a bit. She's okay with short stems, so it's perfect. So I'm going to go ahead and harvest all of these.
One of the things I love about hydroponic tulips is the fact that there is no dirt, which means no need to clean off the stems. It is super, super fast. One thing that I missed doing last year was starting my own seed, especially on a weekly basis. In my pursuit of growing as many flowers as possible, I was consistently buying from plugs. This season, I am taking out my seed box every single week and looking at what I want to succession plant. This weekend, we're starting some sweet peas and regular peas, and I am soaking the seeds in a fertilizer mix, which in my view creates a more robust plant because they're off to a healthier start. A consistent farm task that lasts throughout the entire year is turning our compost pile. This pile is getting pretty big. It contains all of the weeds from the last 2 seasons, and luckily we have a tractor because this is really difficult to turn by hand. One other important task that we try to stay on top of is keeping our walkways chipped, especially when we start seeing weeds in the beginning of the season. Staying on top of this allows us to maintain weed-free walkways. We have wood chips at the front of our property. Eric takes the tractor, gets a bucket of wood chips, brings them over to the field and dumps them into wheelbarrows, where then I put those wood chips in their proper place. Now, how you choose to maintain your walkways, whether it's through plastic, wood chips, or grass, is a personal decision. Our personal decision is to not use plastic in our field, which is why we use wood chips. I have also learned that you do want to take the time to lay down cardboard because that is also another effective barrier of weed prevention. After all that, it's time to start planting the peas that we soaked in that fertilizer mix, as well as start some more flower and vegetable seeds. And soil blocking is my preferred method of starting from seed because it is plastic free and it creates healthier roots.
It's now Tuesday, which is about 48 hours after I started those seed trays, and I want to see how they're doing. We are going to chemo tomorrow, so we're gonna be gone all day, and then even the day after, it's a partial day. So I wanna make sure that everything is watered, everything looks nice, and I'll show you the progress that the seeds have made because some have already started sprouting. So it kills me that I use saran wrap for this because I try not to use a lot of single-use plastic, but it really is needed to create that humidity. So you can see over here that this is arugula that's sprouted. The second one is a mustard green. So there is some germination. This side is like celery and stuff that's hard to germinate. So I was smart this time. I kept all the ones that I knew are hard to germinate on one side. That way I can remove the saran wrap on the right side and keep it on the left side. Over here, you can see that some of the peas have actually started to germinate, and the sweet peas are going to take a little bit longer to germinate. I don't think I see any that are, nope, there's none in there. But yeah, these are on their way. And I think what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna cover this over here like this. So that way The ones that have sprouted aren't going to be suffocated because if you leave on the saran wrap for too long, you run the risk of getting mold, like a white mold, just because there's no airflow. So if you've been following me, you also know that I've been sprouting my ginger. So it's really nice to see that we've got a lot more eyes that are waking up. Like there's a couple on this one, which is really exciting. And the reason why I do this water method is because I'm trying to accelerate their ability to wake up and sprout versus just putting them in soil, which takes a little bit longer. Doing the same with curcuma. There's some Swiss chard over here that I originally was growing from microgreens, but I actually think I'm gonna move these out and grow into full on Swiss chard. We are back. I finished all of my work meetings today and back down into the grow room where we're going to talk a little bit about tulips. But before that, a few things happened in the past 24 hours. Florist came to pick up the bucket of tulips. I had less than what I wanted to give her. She was looking for anywhere from like 50 to 80 stems. I had just shy of 50, but she was happy with the 50 that she got. But what we're gonna do next is we're actually gonna harvest some tulips for a friend's fundraiser. Her kid is in gymnastics and they're trying to raise money for equipment. And so I'm actually going to be donating a few jars for that cause. Now, here's the thing. These tulips are taking so much longer to color up than what I am used to. Let me show you what I'm talking about. These two trays here are a great example. This is silver parrot, and I've seen heads on these for a couple of days and they just refuse to color up. So I was not comfortable giving the florist these just because I don't think they would color up by Saturday, which is the event, and she's obviously designing with them over the next 24 hours. This here is a double called El Cid. This was a substitute that I got, and I am surprised at just how long it takes to color up, because again, I've also seen buds for at least like a week on these, some of them a week and a half, and this one's just finally starting to color up. It's also ridiculously tall, which is not a bad thing, but just kind of funny. And then I have some in the back over here, which honestly, I don't even know which one this is, but they're starting to color up. What's surprising me is actually how quickly these Sir Winston Churchill daffodils are putting on growth, just because it looked like they had nothing a couple of days ago, and now you can see all of this stuff shooting up. What's really cool about year 2 daffodils, especially when you can see the bulbs in hydro trays like this, is that some of these bulbs really do get bigger, and you can see there's 2 buds on this, and I'm seeing this actually out in my landscaping where I planted these, and some of them are coming back also similarly with 2 in a single bulb. So that's a great example of just how daffodils multiply for you, and they're a really, really great investment. So I do plan on putting some more daffodils out in my landscaping.
It was a lot of fun to pick some flowers and make these small jar arrangements. I really wish I had some more flowers, but the timing just didn't work out, and my friend was very understanding, but I'm hoping to be able to support her daughter a bit more in the future. My Lisianthus plugs are coming soon, and this year I am trying a Korean natural farming alternative to using root shield. More on this in an upcoming video.
We are finally at the weekend again, and today it is 80 degrees, which is nuts. I'm in shorts right now, but for the most part, this March has actually been relatively cool, which is good, because one of the things you don't want is to have all of these heat waves, especially so early on in spring, because it forces things like tulips to blow open a lot more quickly and not necessarily achieve longer stems, especially for shorter stem varieties. So I've got things like Foxtrot and Foxy Foxtrot that are in the beds, and I want to make sure that they can get as long stems as possible through having cooler weather. But today we are actually going to be planting out a few more vegetables. So let me show you what the seedlings now look like. We've got a bunch of different things here. This is the last of the stock that does need to go out, so I'm going to put this out. Here's actually some of the snaps that survived the initial seeding that I did that killed every other snap. So there's only like a couple. They look okay. These lily bulbettes that I talked about in another video are really putting on leaf growth. Still a little too early to put out. Chard, I just started hardening, so not putting that out. I had just seeded this tray last time. So this was what, like about 5 days ago. You can see that the snow peas are starting to put on growth. I have a feeling that these other seeds over here that were other peas were not viable because none of them are sprouting. We've got some sweet peas that are finally starting to sprout. I see one over here too. But sweet peas take a little bit longer than regular peas. This is some bok choy. Some status is also starting to come up, which is exciting. And then these are the ones that I'm putting out today. So kale, cabbage, we got some spinach, mustard greens, some rapini. This is Paris cost lettuce. They are actually doing so well here that I think these are way ahead than some of the ones that I put out earlier a few weeks ago, because obviously it's been cooler outside. But we're going to try to plant as many of these as possible into the ground today. Here is actually some sweet pea that I started about 2.5 weeks ago. These are ready to go out too. So I was afraid that these wouldn't be as far along as I want them to. I wish that I started them a little bit earlier, didn't have time, but I do think that these will produce flowers, if not definitely seed for me. By the way, a little detour. So I do microgreens in the house, and I had actually thrown this coconut core into this pot. This was like sometime in January when I threw it in here, and I dill and cilantro seeds, and they just started sprouting. So this was part of the idea, which was that I had a failed tray of microgreens. I was like, there's still a lot of viable seed in here. I'm just going to throw this into the pot and they will sprout whenever they're ready. So you can see that the weather conditions are good enough that even dill is sprouting, which is not something I would consider to be a cooler type of crop. I would obviously consider cilantro to be. So when these are a little bit bigger, meaning when they have more true leaves, I will be moving some of these out into the field. And if you don't know, dill makes for wonderful accent flowers. Sometimes the dill actually gets a little bit too big, but they look like little fireworks in bouquets. So I love dill for culinary uses as well as for flower uses.
I don't know why, but I get such a huge thrill when I'm able to put a big vegetable seedling into the ground. This is broccoli rabe, and I find that it does really well where I am this time of year and takes frosts really well. In fact, the ones outside are growing really well relative to some of the other brassicas that I have in the ground. Now that I'm in my 4th year of flower farming, I feel like I've become a bit wiser. This is an area where I was trying to overwinter some snapdragons. Unfortunately, I don't think they succeeded. And in the past, I would have chalked it up to sunk cost and waited to see if any snapdragons would start showing up. Even if they did show up, they would probably show up too late and be overtaken by thrips. So this year, I am doing something different and clearing this area so that way I can prep it to plant something new. Now, before we do that, we do have 2 more buckets of food waste that we need to bury. And so this is the final resting ground for that bucket of food waste. And I'm hoping that the earthworms are going to enjoy this feast and give us some very nutritious soil to work with.
Hey guys, it's already Thursday. Like, most of the week is over. Didn't really have too much of an update other than the fact that I've been harvesting a lot of stems from here. And I just want to show you in full transparency what this looks like right now, because there is a bit of failure. All right, so there is a ton of what we call stem topple over here. This is my silver parrot, which again, I have not yet gotten a viable crop out of from hydroforcing. I think this is completely operator error. And one thing about stem topple is that it is humidity driven, but I have found in my experience that it is very variety prone. So for example, this is actually called Silver Cloud. And I've had maybe like 1 or 2 stems that have had stem topple, but for the most part, they have done really well. And I've even tested like a dozen stems in a vase upstairs just to make sure that they're not going to topple over. I've also found that Black Parrot over here also is pretty sturdy, especially in my tests. So we've been able to harvest quite a bit of stems from the Silver Cloud as well as the Black Parrots. There's some stem topple over here off of a variety called El Cid, which was a sub for me. I wasn't super thrilled about it anyway. There's some more Black Parrot over here. So what you can see is that even for someone who has been relatively experienced in hydroforcing, it's been a challenging season for me. A lot of it really is driven by the fact that I just haven't had as much time with these because of my daughter's treatment, but also the weather patterns are kind of changing. And, you know, it's been a little bit more wet this winter than other winters, so I need to have more controls in place. The daffodils are doing really, really great. You can see that these are actually ready to be harvested. And these are going to look really, really pretty with the lavender purple from Silver Cloud and like the burgundy purple from the parrots. The other thing I'm really happy about is this smooth transition from having hydro tulips flow into field tulips, which still aren't ready yet for me, which is like especially late this year. And so we're in the beginning of April. I think within the next 10 days, we're gonna start getting our first stems, but it's gonna be perfect because I think I'll definitely have a lot more stems this year for Easter than last year, which is basically a month earlier in late March. And by also hydroforcing daffodils here, which are not like your traditional daffodils, they don't look like daffodils. I have more of these in the ground outside that are way behind. So again, like I have a succession of steady blooms that's gonna take me through probably about a month at this point. Let me actually show you what they look like outside right now. We are now looking at my landscape area, which I had planted a bunch of daffodil bulbs. They're all specialty daffodils. So this is like a little bit more white. This one's a roughly double. I planted them late. So the stems look tall right now, but when they first started blooming, they were pretty short, so they weren't really viable. Now, that being said, I think what's really interesting is when you look at the same variety that was in the hydroponics tray, this one over here, this is called Sir Winston Churchill. Look how behind these are. And I like the timing of these double daffs versus the traditional daffodils because these are going to be coming in more aligned with my tulips in the field. So I always like doing a little bit of a mix just because it gives a lot of good textural interest. And you can see that these are actually going to be monster blooms. This is so much bigger than the ones inside. Again, both are on season 2. So the goal is to get those in the trays outside here for next year and potentially buy some more bulbs, which I can hydroforce. And I think I'm going to pluck a few stems over here that are of adequate height to also put into my mixed bouquets. This is what the current fridge looks like. Got a bucket full of tulips. No produce in here, so no ethanol. And I want to remind you that you want to keep your daffodil separate from your tulips because these emit a sap and that will go into this water. So when I create bouquets, I'll cut the stems of these to continue to make sure that they're getting hydration, but I won't cut these stems over here. I've had a bit of a lull in my morning of marathon meetings. So taking a late lunch walk, believe it or not, it's actually like 75 degrees, but very muggy outside right now. The state of things have just really accelerated here in the field in terms of the amount of growth that things have put on since I last came out here into the field. Let me show you a couple of examples. This is the state of tulips right now. Now, if you remember just a week ago, these were obviously a little bit shorter, but these were just starting to poke through. And I went back into my notes. This is actually a Foxy series, which tends to be a little bit short. So you can see the heads already coming through. And I love Foxy. Again, they happen to be short, so we'll see my opinion on them this year. And when I say went back to my notes, this is what my notes look like. When I'm in a rush outside and I need to take notes, this is what I do. But more exciting is the fact that we've now had some lilies start to pop through. So if you haven't been following me, one thing that I like to do with these really tall raised beds is put lilies underneath and then have a layer of soil and then put tulip bulbs on top. And this is called lasagna planting. So we are stacking the bed like a lasagna, and then that way I can pull the tulips out, and then afterwards the lilies will be able to poke through. Now the lilies are actually poking through everywhere. And again, this idea of succession planting lilies, even within the same type of variety, I achieved that through crate planting, through in-ground planting, as well as through planting in these raised beds. So here's an example of a raised bed where I didn't have as many tulips in there. And you can see that the lilies are a lot more further along. And these are lilies entering to year 3 of production. So this bed really only has tulips over here, and the lilies are a lot more prominently showing up because there's a space for them to poke up. Oh my God, we already have the scarlet lily beetle. I gotta go kill that. I can tell that we have the lily beetle already because oops, here it is. Here's another one. Because I saw some holes in the leaves and I was actually looking for them. So I'm gonna I'm going to make sure that I am on top of this. One of the reasons why I'm not planting more lilies this year is because with my daughter's treatment, I know I'm not going to be able to be as on top of scouting for these pests, and they will completely decimate my crop. So of course, here we are in early April and we already have them. I do want to call out that I think these are actually leaves sprouting from bulbs that I didn't get a chance to take out last year. And basically, you know, if I leave them in, I wonder if they're actually going to give me bloom heads next year. But for the most part, you know, you can see where the new tulips are versus the ones where the bulbs didn't get taken out. And I actually see like 3 scarlet lily beetles, which is really scary right now. So I'm going to stop the camera and get to killing some of them. It is now after work and we are going to get going making bouquets for the country store tomorrow. So this is all of the tulips that I've harvested hydroponically. Most of them are that silver cloud tulip, but I think we're still going to be able to make them work. So one thing that I'm going to do is, because I just harvested some daffodils, is I am going to put a CVBN tablet into my final bucket of water, because this will help make sure any sap that comes out of the daffodils will not create a toxic environment for the tulip stems, and therefore not decrease the vase life of the tulip stems. My pricing is going to be 12 tulips for $25, which is an increase in price year over year. Last year, all my bouquets were $20. We're moving up to $25 just for higher inflation as a whole. Also, I feel like my bouquets as a whole are actually worth $25. Several other people have actually commented on that. And I think that this will also just give me a little bit more buffer going forward in terms of not needing to make as many bouquets to make the same amount of money. But I feel like $25 is really, really reasonable. So we're gonna get going over here. I actually stopped the camera briefly because as I was putting the bouquet into the sleeve, I realized that the sleeve was a little too long. So I actually cut this a little bit and it really helps. So let me show you what I'm talking about. These are pre-folded, pre-glued sleeves. I think they're from Happy Day Paper. They're actually from the cooperative that I sold from last year. So I didn't place the order, someone else did. We buy together as a group and it really helps with the pricing. So look, you can see over here how now this is perfect in terms of size, and the tulips still pop up and you can see the tulips here, versus if I didn't cut it, the tulips would be hidden underneath. And when you're putting this all into a bucket, it just makes it easier for the customer to see up front what they're getting. All right, there we are. We've got only 5 bouquets. I mean, I don't go crazy with this country store. I would rather just restock as needed. Took me literally like 5 minutes to make all this, which is about a minute a bouquet. You know, not necessarily my best timing, but I'm also not in a rush. I just really love these colors. I think when these open up, they're going to be so pretty and petite. And of course, tulips, as they get more mature, are going to open a bit more. So these are hopefully going to open up beautifully in the store tomorrow. And I think outside it's going to be about 66 degrees. So perfect weather. And hopefully I'll be able to make some more bouquets for the weekend. It's a very wet, rainy Saturday. Questioning my choice of being outside right now, but work must be done. We've got some planting to do. Got some very root-bound peas that are in their containers that need to get transplanted. I'll show you what they look like. And then today's task is to take care of this cleanup over here so that we can expose the mums, and hopefully later on I can take some cuttings. Let me show you what the peas look like first as this rain continues to come down. So last week I seeded some snow peas over here. You can see that this side actually has no germination and none of those seeds actually germinated. So I think something was actually off with those seeds. They're very old. They're like 5 years old, although peas typically do fine. So these did pretty well. I actually started transplanting some of them, but I want to show you, like, this is a clear, cheap, like cell tray, but you can see like how quickly peas get root bound, which is why you want to transplant them as quickly as possible. I got some sweet peas out already. You can see that they're actually getting a little bit of damage at night. Like we're having these typical wild swings where the days might get to 70, the nights are still like 30s. So, but these are going to be fine, especially once the weather starts picking up. And the other thing on the agenda is to put like a little climbing trellis for the peas to be able to climb over here. This was my dahlia row last year. So the goal is to then take that climbing trellis and flip it around so that way I can net the dahlias when they are coming in. I am done with this row, and I promise you, even though it looks really messy right now, you're gonna see a lot more green even by the end of this video, which is like a week from now. Let me show you what it looks like. So we have a lot of mums poking out right now. These are just heirloom mums that are like, I don't even know what variety they are at this point, but someone gave them to me around like late June last year, which is a little bit late to be planting mums over here because these are plants that need a lot of time to establish. They need to put on bushy growth, and then they start putting on flowers when the day length gets shorter. So if you don't put them in early enough, you're not going to get a viable crop with long stems and a lot of stems. But the other thing that I have in this aisle over here is actually some echinacea. This is some of the double echinacea that you saw in the landscaping. It tended to do better over here because the deer weren't trying to eat it. So we do have just patches of this echinacea that I'm hoping that it will perennialize over time and then I can intercrop. We're also seeing some of my baptisia actually survive. You can see some two green heads over here that are like poking up, or shoots, so that's promising. I bought a lot of baptisia. I think I bought like 3 varieties, and there were like 30 in each tray, so a total of 90. I put them all in the landscaping because they're supposed to be deer resistant, and they're not deer resistant, at least not for my deer. So the deer would yank them out. I don't think they liked eating them, but the damage was done. So I think like 3 survived out there, and I put a few in here. But you know, even having like 9, 10 baptisia plants would be awesome, because once they establish, they're going to be monsters and they're going to give me so much filler. So hoping that those actually do well. There's actually another filler that I bought that's a perennial. Let me show you what that looks like right now. Also on today's to-do list is to clean up this area over here, but I'm really here to show you this. So I still have the tag. This is Stairway to Heaven, or Pulmonium. Anyway, this is going to be a good filler for me in like the early summer. I also bought a tray of this, which is about 30, put them outside. The deer started eating them. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 left out of 30. And again, if these can grow well over here, then I'll have my filler. High chance I will throw the ball for you. I'm walking back, and oh my god, it looks so nice that there's all of that cleanup that has been done. I am not a clean, tidy farmer, as you can tell. There's just like stuff everywhere. It is a goal of mine to be a little bit more clean this year. I think I get a pass from last year because of what happened with E, but overall I think that the field actually looks like it's in a pretty decent shape. Now, one of the things that I was actually doing in the middle of the week was really getting this yarrow patch a little bit more organized. You can see there's like a lot of little seedlings popping up. I don't even know what these are. There's some of that dock rhizome, and I just wanted to make sure that the yarrow had some breathing space, and I'm curious to see if I do that, whether or not that will actually help the yarrow in terms of staying true to color. But I find that where the yarrow grows, there tends to be a lot of weeds, just because it's so hard to weed in between the yarrow. So another goal this weekend is to make sure that this area is nice and clean and just ready for the yarrow to take off. But you can see there's been a lot of improvement throughout this entire area and getting ready for more planting and for better weather.
In case you couldn't tell, spring on the farm involves a lot of grunt work. I am constantly cleaning up the beds, I am weeding, I am trying to get on top of things before it gets hot and things really start going out of control. Now that being said, there's also a lot of planting during this time of year, but also getting infrastructure ready. This is the first year that I am growing peas in enough volume that I need an adequate type of trellis, and I am using a Hortanova net style fabric as that trellis. Now come back to me in about 5 months and I'll let you know whether or not this was a good idea, because I can already anticipate that taking off climbing vines of sweet peas is going to be a pain in the butt from this type of material.
All right, so check that out. That actually looks better than I thought it would go. And again, when I said I was going to flip it, so dahlias are underneath here, assuming that they actually overwintered. They are going to be netted, and the goal would be to then flip this over here when the dahlias are peeking through. And if you're not peeking through, I'll just grow something that needs to be netted. And yeah, so that would save potentially some time, because sometimes it's just getting the net out, getting it all laid out and not like all tangled up is the harder part. This is not the plastic type of Hortanova netting. This is a fabric base. I think it's polyester, so it can withstand the UV light. I've just found that the plastic is not very long lasting. It tends to just fry up in the sun and then end up chipping away. So you don't get a lot of use out of it, and it's plastic. So I'm trying to reduce the use of plastic. Yeah, so here are some of the snow peas that I planted, and I have more peas. So I soaked way too many peas last time, and I didn't have enough trays to put them in. So what I did was I kind of just threw them all in here, kind of as a last ditch effort, and they're sprouting. So you can see over here that I've got a few peas. I've already started collecting them in here. So I'm just gonna bring them over. I have a really embarrassing story to tell you guys, which Eric is just Eric's so shocked that I did this and is so sad that he didn't take any photos. But basically, when I first started gardening, I actually had peas that sprouted because we were growing microgreens, and I thought these were shoots, thought the roots were shoots. So I actually put them upside down like this in a container, and he came home and he was like, "Are you serious? Are you the dumbest person on the face of the earth?" So yes, when I first started planting, I thought roots were shoots, and I put peas up like this. But now I know better. So yeah, so we're going to dig these out over here, because I just want to have one section that is peas and snow peas, and just have them all in one place. Ooh, so you can actually see the difference here in terms of, this is a darker seed, this is a lighter seed. So that was the b.a.r.e snow pea. And then the lighter one is the Lincoln pea. And that's the one that I thought the seeds were old and didn't germinate. But as I said, pea seeds stick around for a long time. They should still be able to germinate. So that was definitely operator error on my end. Might have just given it too much humidity and they rotted because they were already soaked. But yeah, so I am pretty happy at my pea haul over here. I've learned that if you want to grow peas, you got to grow a lot of them, because they are so good. They're so sweet that they're never going to make it past the garden if you don't grow enough. So hopefully this year we're going to have a ton. Last night we got down to 27 degrees, which, while not common during this time of year, is definitely not unheard of. Now this spring has still felt really cool relative to the other springs. It's actually more reminiscent of the springs that I grew up in, and would have been a great spring to have grown more crops like ranunculus, anemones, even tulips. In fact, this is the first time, so my third year of growing field tulips where I haven't had this massive issue of we're having a heat wave and I need to get out and pull as many tulips as possible, but I'm working. So it's been nice to have the tulips grow slow and steady and hopefully timing it perfectly for Easter, which is coming up. But I came outside to check on the crops, and as you can see, everything did really well. Even things like lilies, which technically are not frost tolerant, I found that they tend to be actually pretty hardy, even if they have buds. Again, it's when things that are coloring up and are about to bloom, that's when they are definitely most susceptible to frost damage. But I found things like tulips can also totally take temperatures in like the high 20 degrees. Even if there's buds, there's like a hint of color, they'll do totally fine, as you saw. And last night I was like, do I come out and cover? I've had 2 long days of work. We've had workshops. I was like in the city the other day, and it was just one of those things where I'm coming home. I obviously want to take care of my daughter too. And so the field just takes a completely like last priority seat in these circumstances. And it's like, if you can tough it out in the cold, then you win and you get to live. And if not, too bad. So increasingly, I am looking for crops that are hardy in that way, that fit into my lifestyle. So Eric and Grandpa just took E to, we call this the late round of chemo. And then hopefully we'll be able to enjoy the rest of the week, and I'll get a few more hours during the week at the end of the day to do a little bit more cleaning up. It is now Friday, close to 6 p.m. I laughed that I ever thought I would have time during this week to be able to do anything outside, because work is so bonkers, and we are just all so glad that it is the weekend. We're all running on fumes right now. But I wanted to end this video showing you the beautiful bouquet of tulips that we grew. So the purple lavender is the silver cloud from downstairs in the basement that was grown hydroponically. This is the Sir Winston Churchill that was also grown hydroponically. And the yellow is Foxy Foxtrot, which is a double early tulip, typically has shorter stems. But as you can see, if you put them in the right vase, it looks great. So I'm thrilled that I'm gonna have more of these outside. Now it is rainy, it is really cold, and all of that is making it take a lot longer for the tulips to color up. I'm not complaining, because I want the majority of my tulips to arrive for Easter, and just this buys me a lot more time to do that. So I just wanted to show you what the tulips look like, and super thrilled that I'm going to be able to offer more of these next week for Easter. Now, despite the rain, I still came outside because I wanted to be absolutely sure that none of the tulips were ready to be picked, and therefore I don't have any for the country store this weekend, unfortunately. So you can see over here, these are supposed to be like a red or pinkish type of tulip. There's no color on them yet. The doubles over here still need a little bit more time. So all of these will be ready for Easter. To wrap everything up, I just wanted to show those of you who haven't flower farmed before or are looking to start a flower farm, that's not always rainbows and butterflies. It's not always just frolicking in the field. There's obviously work involved to get to that state, but it's not necessarily bad work. I do genuinely enjoy being outside, working with my hands, having an excuse to not sit down on my butt all day. So all of this is a lot of fun, and I'm hoping to be able to share with you some success stories of the crops that I started from seed and are already in the ground. So I will see you guys in the next video, but in the meantime, here's an update on E.
More!
More. Yeah.
More!
Working.
Working good. Good for your lung. Good for your lung.
Whoa! Harder!
Wait. Yeah. Oh, no.